of the next. And my next guest has been a friend of mine for around 30 years, although neither of us looks old enough for that to be true. He is the owner, editor-in-chief of al-youm. He is, frankly, the only credible Arabic journalist that I've ever known. There may be others, but by and large, they're all in somebody's pay or other, and their journalism reflects that. I had a celebrated clash on Twitter just in the last few days whilst I was in Beirut with the Daily Star, which is not the semi-pornographic, ludicrous organ in England, but an apparently respectable newspaper in Lebanon. I say apparently, it looks and pretends to be respectable, but it is in fact owned and controlled by some of the most tyrannical plutocrats on the earth. But Abdel Bari Atwan has always eschewed that kind of model. He is a truly independent man. And as someone once said in dedicating a book to him, he is the last Arab. Abdel Bari Atwan, thanks very much for joining us. We want to talk about our mutual friend, late and lamented President Yasser Arafat. But tell me first about this new newspaper venture that you're in, al-youm.
Well, actually, George, as we're friends for years, you know how stubborn I am when it comes to the freedom of expression. Mm-hmm. I decided to go in line because I couldn't sustain my newspaper, Al-Quds Al-Arabi. A lot of debts, a lot of troubles, a lot of actually bans and suspensions.
Banned from many Arab countries.
Oh yes, many Arab countries. So I throw the towel on the end because and I looked for this new venture. Thank God for the last 3 months, we have more than actually 7 or 8 million readers for the last 3 months.
Wow.
And it was a huge success.
Entirely online, no online. Distribution to worry about, no print costs.
Oh, no
this
salaries.
Is the future.
No salaries.
Are you doing it all yourself and with voluntary contribution?
All of them, and even most of the writers, all of the writers actually, they send their articles and free of charge, and they are very happy to have a platform to express their view without any problems. Actually, some of them also followed me from my own older newspaper, Al-Quds Al-Arabi. So I think it is prosperous, but the problem is after 3 months I didn't receive a single
any
ad.
salary. No.
So I have to struggle.
That's the problem with the internet. It's never been a better time to get your point of view across. But it's never been a worse time to get paid for it.
The problem is now I'm writing articles like mad here and there and trying to do a lot of broadcasts in order to cover at least part of the cost, and the rest of the cost actually I pay from my own
nothing. Saving. You better leave now because we can't pay you.
I know, that's why
you're only here for love.
That's why I'm here, George. You know that.
I know. And you do most things for love, I must say. And of course, one of the people that we both loved very much was the late and lamented President Yasser Arafat. Now, you are, of course, a Palestinian, born, raised in the camp, and I have been a comrade of yours and of the Palestinian people since the mid-1970s, and as such, we both grew close to and loved President Arafat. And my goodness, we miss him now, not just on the Palestinian track, although that's bad enough, but on the Arab track, some of the Arab problems that we have today, I have no doubt if he were still alive, he'd be shuttling back and forward, trying to resolve. And the reason he's no longer with us is because that he was murdered. And you and I were in no doubt about that. We were in Paris at the Perse military hospital when he passed away. There was absolutely no doubt amongst the Palestinians there around Arafat that he had been murdered. And you don't have to be Einstein to work out that if he was murdered, he must have been murdered by Israel. That much is not controversial, except on the BBC and in the pen of the rancid David Aronovich of the London Times, proprietor Rupert Murdoch. It's not controversial at all. now to say that Arafat clearly was murdered. He was clearly murdered on the orders and in the interests of Israel. But you and I also both know that because we visited him in his presidential compound in many parts of the world as it had to move around, he could not be murdered without someone close to him making it possible. So what's your theory?
My theory is the Israeli most likely behind this kind of crime because he was poisoned by polonium, which is, lately discovered after the Levchenko murder in London. Why I say that? Because this polonium is actually possessed by 3 countries on the world. It is actually United States of America and Russia and Israel. So
we could rule out 2 of those.
Yes, so we can say I don't think the Russian has any interest in murdering Arafat, the same thing the American. And he actually told me that there are 2, or actually he received a message from the Egyptian late Amr Suleiman, the chief of intelligence. He told him that the Israeli, they would like to kill you. The American, they would like to deport you. Ourselves, the Egyptian, we would like you to stay as you are, but without any power, without any teeth anyway. So he was scared of death. He was scared of being assassinated, not death itself. He's, a believer, a great believer man. So he was very careful, taking all the precaution he can. For example, he put iron bars on the top of his presidential compound in Ramallah, so to prevent any helicopter to land on the top. He actually locked his fridge, and so nobody can put food there. And he was the only one who got the key. And also, poor man.
So typical of him.
Yeah, poor man. He used to eat only canned food and avoid, as he can, any cooked food. So he was afraid that somebody could put poison or actually inside the food. So he tried to do that. But in the end, after all these precautions, I think the Israeli managed to reach him. And he was actually careful of that. But in the end, he's not. He wasn't a compound. No water, no food, no electricity.
And they were surrounded.
They
totally surrounded the compound. As we know, they partially destroyed it. So everything that went into the compound passed through them.
Exactly.
Every food and every bottle of water and so on all went through them. But of course, we both know that President Arafat also had food tasters. He had dedicated security people who were with him for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, the same people who were with him in Ramallah had been with him in Tunis, and some even had been with him in Beirut before that, and 1 or 2 even in Jordan before that. And these people were entirely trusted by him to taste his food, to ensure that nobody had adulterated it with poison. In any case, the best way to deliver polonium to someone is not in their food, because they might notice it, but in either what they drink or what they ingest in one way or another. So the latest theory that I'm hearing, when we were both in Beirut in the last few days, the latest theory I'm hearing is that this poison was administered through his medication. I don't know if you are across that theory, but of course, nobody tests your medication. Nobody is going to take your medicine for you. And that's actually, therefore, quite an efficient way of delivering it.
Well, I had the same theory. I had other theory from his brother, actually, who was a doctor. He said he could be actually poisoned by radiation from distance. So you don't know how the Israeli actually managed to reach him.
Although that would have affected others as well as him.
Exactly, yeah. So, but it seems, they are very, very skillful people. They are wicked, so they can reach their enemies easily. By all means, they assassinated several Palestinian leaders before. So Arafat wasn't the target. Ariel Sharon, the Israeli Prime Minister, who's in a coma now, he was determined actually to kill him, and he indicated several times in his, talks with his Israeli ministers that Arafat should go. So I'm not surprised he actually managed to orchestrate this kind of crime, and he was behind it. And at the end, they reached the poor man and they killed him. So polonium could be as you mentioned, actually smuggled or planted in his medicine, and or could be also water. Could be, you don't know, because Arafat sometimes, he's very kind to the people, and he used to be visited by a lot of admirers, a lot of supporters of the Palestinian people coming from all over the world. So you don't know, maybe somebody smuggled among them. And it's true, he has a food taster, as you mentioned, George, and you know that very well, and I agree with you. But despite that, sometimes, he can't be like that all the time and ask the food taster to taste everything. Sometimes he, takes something. So he's a man of people. He is not actually arrogant. He is not, isolated himself from others. He likes to be among his own people. So I'm not surprised by the way or another. I don't know. They managed to reach him.
There are some peculiarities, though, going back to the hospital, to these last ghastly days before he passed away. I had a conversation with Nasser Kidwa, his nephew, and then the Palestinian ambassador to the United States. He told me two things that now appear strange. First of all, he was absolutely adamant that the president had been murdered, that this dramatic decline in his health from normal to zero in such a very short time was only explicable by an act of murder. But he also told me that the president's widow, Suha, had absolutely refused to allow a post-mortem. I recall this well because I argued to him that whilst a normal man may be said to be the property of his wife on his demise, Arafat was very far from a normal man. He did not belong to her. He belonged to the revolution. He belonged to the country, the people, the world. And this veto could not possibly be tolerated. Then, 8 years later, we find Suha demanding a post-mortem. And we have Nasser saying the president cannot possibly be subject to this indignity of his remains being invaded posthumously in this way. It's all very odd to me. What about you?
It is very odd. Both are right. Why? Because, Nasser al-Qudwa said that there is no reason to actually exhume his body and examine it and take samples, simply because, already we know that he was murdered by the Israeli and we can do nothing about it. This is his theory. And then in the end, when the French actually court is taking over the whole subject, he started to change his mind. The same thing Suha, and she was under tremendous pressure from Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, and others around him, that they should not actually fight a war with the Israeli over this kind of examination. So the French government, I heard that they put pressure on Abbas and Nabil Shat and others, not actually to go ahead with any examination, with any test of the poison or anything. So maybe all these reasons together was behind that. They shut up about the whole thing. I believe the French said yes, he was poisoned. Yes, he was murdered. But we tested about 300 poison. And none of them, was used to kill him. So, anyway, the Palestinian Authority also gave an excuse. I had an official there. He said to me that, the peace process was in its way, and they know that Israel will be furious if we accuse them or if we do anything, and the whole thing will collapse. So maybe putting all these together,
raison d'etat.
Yes, it was very clear. There was some sort of a conspiracy, not actually to expose the Israeli or to raise a finger against them, and they're saying, you are behind that. This is the problem. But now, once the a Swiss lab examined the body, and examined the clothes of Arafat's and his toothbrush and other, they discovered a high level of polonium even after 9 years of his death. So it was very clear that the man was poisoned by polonium. Now we heard that there are different theories that it's not polonium, but well, if it is not polonium, definitely they will discover or will reveal the secret, because polonium is the most difficult thing to detect. So I believe the man was murdered definitely by polonium. George, because in that time before Litvinenko, the Russian dissident death with polonium in London, nobody can trace the polonium. So maybe the Israeli realized that it is a kind of poison. Nobody can.
It's quite an effective weapon, no doubt. Except for the fact you have to get really up close and personal to deliver it. Let's move on in the closing moments, if we may. I've been with the Palestinian people 40 years, and you've been with them always because you were born as a Palestinian and will die as one. It's my view that the situation of the Palestinian people is worse today than it has ever been in my time in the struggle. I wondered if you shared that view.
Definitely, I do share it. George, today, we were commemorating the great late Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela, like you, was a great supporter of the Palestinian people. I met him in London, and he said to me, in my time, I will see a Palestinian state, independent Palestinian state. I will see the end of the occupation. I remember I visited him in 1991. He was in Mayfair Hotel, and he was very, very optimistic about the Palestinian struggle, about the outcome of it. But unfortunately, he died, and we are far, far away from any independent Palestinian states. Actually, we were very close during Arafat time, but since actually the Oslo agreement was signed, since the negotiation actually failed completely, 20 years of negotiation, the Israeli never gave up a single centimeter, a single concessions to the Palestinian people, but more land grabbing, more settlements, more humiliation. Yes, we are far away, but there is no actually resistance, there is no any kind of actually a pressure on the Israeli from the Palestinian side. Unfortunately, now the Mr. Abbas is going to negotiation not actually to reach independent Palestinian state, but also only to please the American, in order they can pay money to him in order to pay his 160,000 staff in his payroll. So it is actually degrading to the Palestinian people, I believe. But one day the Palestinian people will resume their struggle, and they will achieve their aim to be independent, to be free like everybody else in the world.
Well, I was speaking in Berlin last Saturday evening to the Association of Palestinian Doctors and Pharmacists there. And in the audience, to my surprise, was Jihad, the widow of the great Palestinian leader Abu Jihad. And I was, of course, reflecting on the days in the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, when we had the Intifada, we had leadership of such quality as such men. And I couldn't help but compare and contrast the leadership then with the leadership today, and the relationship between that and the fact that the cause is going backwards. So your optimism, which is characteristic of you, is noble, and I, of course, believe that in the end, right will prevail. But I'm not sure that you and I will see it. Our children may see it. Is that how it seems to you?
Well, actually, I remember Yasser Arafat when he signed, late Yasser Arafat, when he signed Oslo agreement. I disagreed with him. I said this actually agreement wouldn't lead us to our ambition. He said...
I agreed with him, I'm sorry to say.
You agreed with him. I
disagreed
with him.
I supported Oslo because of him.
Yes. He said to me, listen, not in my time, but in your time, you will see the Israeli running away from Palestine because our people is a great people. I don't know. he passed away. Maybe I will see it in my time, as he said. He said not, but I'm, starting getting older and older. So I hope his prediction will be right, and
luckily,
see Palestine
by the
liberated.
Grace of God, we have many children to fill our shoes after us. Thank you very much, Abdel Bari Atwan, Editor-in-Chief of Rai al-Youm. How do we get that? RaiAlYoum.com?
RaiAlYoum.com.
RaiAlYoum.com.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
And there is a translation of my articles,
really?
To English language, yes.
Okay, so that's not just for Arabic-speaking readers, that's for English-speaking readers also. Abdel Bari, a pleasure, always. This is the mother of all Christmas podcasts.
There are known knowns. There are known